most of the time is one of the top 7 here, okay? I'm either going to use one of these techniques, or I'm going to have to combine these techniques in order to make the deal work, okay? So let's look at number 4 real quick, seller financing and subject to. Now, this could be a scenario where the house is a $200,000 house, and he's got a $100,000 mortgage, okay? And he's open to doing seller financing with me, but not for the whole thing. He can't. He has a $100,000 mortgage that needs to be paid off. Now, if I'm buying houses for 40 cents on the dollar, 40% of what they're worth, and it's a $200,000 house, hell, his mortgage is already 50% of the value of the house. So I can't buy it for cash. It's not an option. But what is an option is combining these two. So what I would deal with the guy is I would explain to him that what if I took over the mortgage subject to, like Jeremy just explained, and the remaining amount that I'm going to negotiate with you is going to be a seller finance note. So it becomes a whole new way to do a deal. There's number 4 for you. Okay? So in this case, it's the same as if he was providing, if it was a free and clear house and he was providing all of the financing, he's going to be providing all the financing on this one. So I'd be willing to pay him a very strong asking price. If he wanted $200,000, maybe I don't go 2, but I'm going to be paying interest on the subject to loan, so it's going to cost me a little bit more, but it's still a house that comes with financing. And I don't get to decide what the payment is on the subject to mortgage, because that's already in place. But I do get to decide what the payment's going to be on the seller finance note. So I have less control over a 100% seller finance note, but I still have some control over the way that these payments are going to be. So this is a concept that comes up all the time. So in Phil's bag, you got the top 3 deals, and then when you get to this kind of deal, you need a different form so you can pull it out, explain to the people what you're doing, and we have a separate contract that we use for that. So what I'm doing in that case is, once again, I find a way to buy the house with none of my own money, without the support of banks. I get to keep the properties, and sometimes I get paid to buy them. I'll get into that soon. Okay, so the next option is number 5, seller financing and private money. This could be a case, this happens all the time, it's a very common case, where the guy says, well, I'm willing to carry some paper and become the mortgage company, but not for all of it. I need some money. And, he might throw a number out there like, well, I need 50 grand. So what you do there is you start asking him some questions. Well, what do you need the 50 for? And sometimes he says, none of your damn business. Jeremy often says, well, it's my money. I want to know where it's going. But what you typically do is ask them, well, what is it that you're looking to do with that 50 grand? And try to get them to reveal to you what it is. If you ask those kind of questions, what often happens is you find out that maybe he wants to downgrade to another house. Maybe you could help him do that and find one for him and finance it. Or maybe he wants to go buy a fancy car. And you could say, well, what if I made the payments on your car for you? So you explore the situation. In most cases, if you take the time to ask questions about what they need the 50 for, you'll find that it's not really 50, it's something else. Okay, like this happens a lot. Well, I'm moving to Florida, and I want to buy this condo, and well, you don't need 50 grand to buy a $100,000 condo, 20 grand. But I'll show you how to do it if you don't know how. You ask questions, you get involved in it. So the point is that the item 5 is a very common way to buy houses, but you need to understand the top 3 ways first, and then you also need to understand how to work these buying techniques together. Number 6 is private money and subject to. The guy might have a $100,000 mortgage that he's willing on a $200,000 house, and is willing to let you take over his mortgage subject to, but he wants some cash. So you could use your own cash, or you can go to a private investor and figure out a way to put that deal together. And that gets tricky too, because your private investor is not going to want to take a second position. So it's a tricky deal. But we do these deals from time to time. They do happen. Number 7 is a way where sometimes you'll come across where all 3 ways to buy a house can be put into one deal. Where they might have might be a $200,000 house with a $50,000 mortgage. They want some private money, and then they're willing to carry the rest in a seller finance note. So that's a way where you'd be using all 3 of those techniques to come up with number 7. You know, number 7 basically uses all 3 of these, and there you have yet another technique to buy a house. So we want to share these with you because this is what we're doing all the time, and you know, it's a very successful way to buy a house if you're interested in buying houses with none of your own money. I certainly am. I love it. So another way that we buy houses is wholesaling. I don't know if anybody, I know there's some wholesalers in the room, but basically what you do in wholesaling is maybe you come across that house that you just can't work a deal out for it. You can't work a deal with the seller any way, shape, or form you talk to them about it. But you can probably get the house at a pretty good discount. Then what you can do there is you just get the house under contract, and then you sell that contract to somebody else. And it's a great way to make some money if you need a few bucks in the real estate business. Wholesaling, you essentially get a house under contract and you sell that contract. And I'll talk a little bit about it because it's something that a lot of people are doing today, and I do it as well when I need to make cash, because you can buy and hold all the houses you want in the world, but we all need money to eat, so this is a great way to provide some cash. Typically what I would do in a wholesaling opportunity is if somebody wanted to sell me the house at a price that I felt I could probably sell it to somebody else for a little bit more, I would draft up a contract. I wouldn't argue with them for very long. I would pull out a contract out of Phil's bag. I'd write up the contract where I put $10 down as a deposit on the house, and I make a deal. So I walk out of that appointment with a signed contract. I'm now the equitable owner of that house. I have the legal right to buy that house for the figure set on that contract. And then what I would do is take pictures of the house, and then I would see if I could find another investor who'd be willing to pay me more for that house. And that's a great way to make some bucks for yourself. It happens often. Yeah? Sometimes you make a couple of grand, sometimes you can make a lot more. It depends on how good the deal is. But Yep. We have special contracts for each one of these kind of arrangements, and in that case, if you found somebody who wants to buy the contract, you have to have an assignment for the agreement of sale, and you assign that contract to your buyers, okay? And then you make a spread on it. So number 9 is for foreclosures, and you know there's lots of different. It's a very broad subject. There's lots of different ways to do foreclosures. One of the ways that I do a lot of is I like to buy REOs. So we bid on REOs from time to time and make deals that way. I go to the auctions a lot, but I don't typically buy properties at the auctions. It's a good place to get information, but I don't want to be using, you got to come up with 100% of the cash. So I prefer to buy properties with none of my own money, and that's a dangerous way to buy things. So I don't typically buy at the auctions, but what you do get at the auctions is amazing information. Because what happens is you sit in that room and you watch what the banks, what they call their upset price. The bank stands up and announces the upset price. That means the price they're willing to start the bidding at for that house. And that's critical information because now you know how much the banks are willing to accept for that house. What you also know is you get to watch the investors who buy these things, and you get to watch what they're willing to pay for it. So it's critical information. And a lot of times what happens at a sheriff's sale, if you've ever been to one, is there's 200 houses that are up for sale, and 15 of them sell, if that. Okay, so they all come right back on. The bank ends up buying them, and they go right back on the MLS 2 weeks later from an REO agent, and then now there's a much safer way to buy them from that position. That's the way I like to buy them. So I go to the sales, I get the information, then I bid on those properties off the MLS, and I do that with private investors' money. And I already know what the bank is willing to accept for it. I already know what the investors are willing to pay for it. And I don't have to risk my entire down payment, which is what you have to do at an auction. And I don't have to, at an auction, at the sheriff's sale auction, not even allowed to look at most of the houses. So once it becomes for sale, I have the opportunity to look at it.
And you can short the bank.
How do you finance an REO?
Yeah, you can go to a private, if it's a strong deal, you can go to a private investor and finance it. So I obviously can't work with the bank, and the seller is gone, but that's a situation where you can go to a private investor.
I've been waiting for a bank to actually carry the financing and say, I'll give you monthly payments, I'll take your house. I've yet to do that with the bank, but the third way with foreclosures that I just wanted to touch on is buying pre-sheriff sale, what I call pre-foreclosures. I own preforeclosure.com, so I like to use that name, pre-foreclosure. And the pre-foreclosures is a wonderful opportunity to swoop in and buy a foreclosure and not have to bid against all the other people at the sheriff's sale. So in some cases, actually my previous primary residence, I bought the day before it went to sheriff's sale. And you have to buy it from who? The day before it goes to sheriff's sale. Who's the seller at that point? The owner of the property. So I told you I like dealing with humans more than I like dealing with, corporations. So you go and I sit down and work it out and march down to the sheriff's sale, and the day before the sale's going, and stop that sheriff's sale from happening. And what did I just do? I thwarted everybody else from bidding against me. So they say, what Phil was talking about, all of the 15 properties, property number 723 off the sale. That's because I bought it yesterday. So that's something where if you're going to be in a situation where you have other competition, do you think you'll pay more or less if there's competition? You pay more. So if you can figure out how to buy them before the sheriff's sale, and we can show you how you can get the data to do that. Really, it's a data thing, and you have to know where they are, what the equity positions are. Buying pre-foreclosure, I like that the best. Up until I met Phil, I never bought an REO. Now we're buying REOs, but it's great when you associate with the right people. You really can learn a lot, and that's what we've done. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay. Forrest Gump line there, pretty good. Right, so some of these other techniques, lease options where you can lease properties and then you can sell the option to somebody, or it's kind of like a rent-to-own on the buying side. Equity partnering is something that we do from time to time. We have some private investors who have money and they want to invest in real estate, but they don't want to go out and do it on their own, and they don't want to be just a private money lender. So what we'll do is we'll buy a house, okay, we'll put together a nice deal where we're going to use private money, their private money, but instead of making payments to them, they're going to become a partner in the deal, okay? They're an equity partner in the deal. They're going to own the house with us, and they might not get monthly payments like they normally would in a mortgage, but they get all the upside, they get all the knowledge from being associated with us on this deal. They get to own the deal, they get the cash flow, the appreciation, the depreciation, everything that comes with it. But, the last way to buy a house here is wholesaling to yourself, and really the top three ideas are up top, 1, 2, 3. I love seller financing, but wholesaling to yourself is something that we do a lot of. We don't know anyone else who does wholesaling to yourself. We might have invented it, but we're not sure. But basically what we do in a wholesaling to yourself deal is any deal that you find, and it's a great deal, and you believe that it could be sold to somebody else for more money than you paid for it. That's what a lot of real estate investors do today. But I'm going to make the argument that that's not really real estate investing. You don't even own the wholesale deal. You're buying the house, and then you're selling it to somebody else before you ever settle on it. You never even owned it. So you didn't really invest in it. You didn't put any money into it except for $10 down on a contract, okay? Well, when we see a house that could be wholesaled, but we want to keep that house, we do what's called wholesaling to yourself. And what we do is we structure the mortgage with the sellers if we can, but typically a wholesaler to yourself deal has to have a private lender involved in it. And we simply say to the private lender, we could sell it, we could sell this house right now for $25,000 more than we paid for it to another investor, but what we'd rather do is keep it. Okay, so if you would finance the cost of this house, the cost of the closing cost and the repairs, and in addition to that, give us the additional $25,000, we then would get paid by the private lender's money, and we get to keep the house. So we call that wholesaling to yourself, where we could have sold it to somebody else, but we bought the house, but we also keep it. Okay, and as long as the deal is strong enough where it can support the additional monies that we borrowed, we love to buy houses that way.
I just want to step in and say, I know we have some wholesalers in the room. How many people here are primarily wholesalers? 1, 2, Joe, raise your hand. You do mostly, a lot of wholesaling, right? Okay. So with a lot of wholesalers, I'm always saying, you guys are paying the highest tax rate. And if you fix and flip, the same thing. You're paying the highest tax rate possible. You're paying earned income tax, you're paying self-employment tax, you're paying the FUTA FICA tax. So you're paying the highest tax rate possible. If Joe finds a deal and he's going to wholesale it to me, let's say, let's take the Croydon deal that we did, whatever it was. So it's I got one that we actually, let's take a live one. I have a deal in Amber that we got under contract. It's like 40 grand. I have somebody that wants to pay 55. So I'm happy to, if I were to buy that house for 55 grand, let's say Joe's the wholesaler, he's going to wholesale to me, I'm going to pay 55. I'm going to go, for 55, I'm going to go to my private lender and say, I need to borrow 55 grand plus 30 grand to rehab it or whatever it is, and then I'm going to keep the house or I'm going to flip it or whatever I'm going to do with it. Keep it is better. Instead of me doing that and Joe making that quick 15 grand, what if Joe were to go to, not my private lender, but his own, and say, look, I was going to flip it to Jeremy and make a quick 15 grand, and you would probably lend, if you knew this guy, you probably would lend him the 55 plus the money to rehab it. So how about if you lend me the 55 plus the money to rehab it? That way you get the 15 that you would get by wholesaling, but you don't have to pay taxes on it because it's borrowed funds. And you get to keep the property. And you get the cash flow if it's a rental. You get the depreciation. You get the appreciation. You get the thrill of managing tenants. You get all these good things. But do you follow, does everybody follow what I just said there? You wholesale it to yourself. You keep the wholesale fee that you're going to get because the next guy, he's going to go and use private money or commercial money to buy that house from you. You just borrow the same amount of money that he was going to borrow, and then you get to not pay taxes on that little bit of a spread. So it's a really, really neat idea. So instead of wholesaling it to somebody else, now, if it's a property that you don't even want to own, like there's some properties that we're like, look, it's in Keokuk, Iowa, I don't want to own it. It's way too far away. Then obviously, wholesale it to somebody else. But in a situation where you would keep the property, by all means, hang on to those things, because you're never going to get on the beach if you're always looking for the next deal. One day, you want to have all those deals, have checks showing up in your mailbox whether you wake up or not.
We just love doing wholesale to yourself deals. And if you've heard my tagline, I said it several times tonight, buy houses with none of your own money, without the support of banks, get to keep the properties, and sometimes get paid to buy them. Wholesaling to yourself is how you get paid to buy them. Because if the private lender agrees to pay me $25,000 on top of what I bought it for and closing costs and repairs, he knows going into the deal that the 25 grand is just going to me, to Jeremy. That's how we get paid. Okay? So what we're sharing with you tonight is the tagline, right? How to buy houses with none of your own money, without the support of banks, get to keep the properties, and sometimes get paid to buy them. And it's a tremendous thing, in my opinion. We're not only getting paid tax-free money, because it's not income, it's a loan, but we're also building up a portfolio, which hopefully is going to get me quicker with every deal I do to sitting on that beach with the $12 million portfolio or even a bigger one. Okay, so let's keep moving. So how do you get paid if you're buying all these buy and hold houses? Well, wholesaling to yourself is one that we just talked about. Another one is a traditional wholesale deal. Now, rent to own, is a great way to get paid. Again, let's just say we did a wholesale deal and we bought the house and we got paid $25,000 for that house. That went into our pockets and we keep the house. Well, the next thing we do is we take that house right after settlement and we put it up rent to own. And we try to get an NROC, which is a non-refundable option consideration. So we put it out on the market and we say, this house is going to rent for $14.95 a month. And if a tenant moves in, we want first month's rent, last month's rent, and 1 month's security. So we need $4,500 cash in order for anybody that we decide we want to rent to pay us. So the typical guy has to come up with $4,500 in cash. Well, we could take that same property and list it rent to own. And what we would do rent to own, for example, is we'd say to him, this property is worth $250,000 today. And for a price of maybe, we usually would take whatever the tenant needs to rent it for, $4,500, we multiply that by 3, okay? So we need something like 15 grand for a non-refundable option consideration. They would give us 15 grand. They would also be paying the rent of $14.95 a month, and we would lock in today's sale price for a certain number of years. 2 years usually is what we use. And if they can come up and get a mortgage and buy the house anytime in the next 2 years, we will sell them the house. And why would somebody do that? Well, there's a lot of reasons. One reason would be people who have cash but can't get a mortgage are very interested in rent-to-owns. They want to own the house, and even though they don't own it right now, they will have a legal right to buy it for the next 2 years. So they're equitable owners. And it very much feels to them like they own it, and it feels to us like they own it, because we're going to basically tell them that it's your house, do what you want to do with it. So this is another way that we get paid sometimes. I don't want to spend too much time on it. I got a lot to cover tonight, but...
The other quick thing is that with the non-refundable option consideration, and if there's a way, if you use the right clause in your contract, if you use the right clause, that is actually deferred. It's not taxable when you receive it. It becomes taxable when either they default or they exercise their option. But you have to use the right clause in your option agreement when you sell a property to do that. So that's kind of one of the things that, if you can avoid paying taxes on it till later down the road, then that's always a good thing. So you just have to make sure you have the right language in there.
But so the other ways you get paid for a house are pretty easy to understand. I mean, we rent them, we rent them, we get cash flow, we get appreciation from the houses, not in the last few years, but hopefully in the future that's gonna come back again. We get the depreciation, we get cash flow. So what we call a real deal. When Jeremy and I are looking at deals all the time, it's something that we kind of say between us. Real deal stands for, the real estate assembly line, okay? Well, and if he says to me, hey, I found a deal, it's a real deal, well, I don't need to know much more about it. That means, he just hit a home run. And so we put some of these on the meetup site, and I wanted to share them with you, we promise that we tell people, what are the 3 steps to success in the real estate business? And we think it's buying, and more buying. That's what we're doing. We're not just preaching it to people. We live our lives like that. We're out buying as much real estate as we can possibly get our hands on. So buy, okay? Get busy buying. What is the Smack Yourself resource for private money that we put this on the meetup description of tonight's meeting. Well, the Smack Yourself resource is right here. It's your cell phone. Not my cell phone, your cell phone. If you're looking to raise private money, chances are that if you found a good enough deal and you're an honorable individual and people who know you, like you, trust you, chances are that the person you need to borrow money from is right there in your cell phone. You just got to go through the list. It could be a family member, it could be a friend, it could be anybody that you know. It's a great place to explore private lenders. So what's the hidden gem in the real estate world today? Well, it's kind of like what I was talking about before. The market is talking to you. The hidden gem is single-family homes. Now, traditionally, investors haven't always focused on single-family homes. They typically would buy duplexes, triplexes, commercial things, rental properties where they could jam as many people into a building as possible. I did the same thing when I was starting this business. But the abundance of single-family homes, the availability of all these single-family homes that are just flooding the market are typically put you in a situation where we consider it a hidden gem. That's what we want to focus on buying. And mostly because of the exit strategies that single-family homes have. There are so many different ways that you can, sell a single-family home, rent a single-family home. There's a much bigger market for it as opposed to, say, a duplex or a triplex where only investors are buying them and they're not really buying them in this market. So we wanted to explain it that these kind of deals, the deals that we're talking about tonight, the seller financing, the private money, the subject to loans, a combination of those things, that's what we call a real deal. And it also has to be calculator proof. People often ask me, they go, Phil, what software program do you use to analyze a piece of real estate? We don't have any. I mean, we have one, we never use it. We never turn it on. And we don't even use a calculator. If you have to get out a calculator to figure out if your deal is a good deal, it's not a good deal. Okay? You better be able to figure it out in your head. And if it's so obvious to you in your head, without even putting a pencil to paper, that this deal kicks butt, then you got yourself a real deal. Okay, we're going to share another idea with you that we do, and we, more importantly, are always looking to do. We call it walk the financing. Now, earlier tonight I was talking about seller-financed deals where the first deal I talked about tonight, where I structure a deal with 0% interest, where every single dollar that I pay to the owner of that house is principal that just immediately builds up my net worth, okay? So you would think that if you've got like Jeremy said, if you got a 2% interest loan, you certainly don't want to pay that off, right? Well, 0% interest loan, there's no way you're paying that thing off, okay? So you're going to end up owning that house forever because you can't sell that house, okay? Or can you? We believe you can, and that's where walk the financing comes into place. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that I have a $200,000 house that I did 100% of it. I didn't give the guy any of my own money. There was no mortgage on the house, and that seller lent me. I bought it for $200,000. It was worth $200,000. I paid full price for it, and he has signed a note and a mortgage. Seller finance 100%. So I owe this guy $200,000, and I'm making payments to him, and tenants are living in the building. And let's just say that some tenants move out, and I came up with the clever idea to walk the financing. Well, here's how it would work. First of all, you have to have the right contracts in place when you do the seller finance deal to make sure that you can have the option to walk the financing. But here's what you would do. You call up the private lender, who is not a private lender, the seller who sold you the property, who is giving you the seller finance note. And you explain to them that you sold me this house last year. This is a $200,000 house with after 1 year, it would be $198,000 liened against it. Said, what I'd like to do is I'd like to sell this house, but I don't want to pay you off. I don't want to pay off